climate crisis. It's not a problem, it's not an issue, it's a crisis. And we are here because we have a candidate for the governor of New York State who has some pretty bold ideas about what we need to do here in New York State to help combat the climate crisis. So without further ado, let's get into the program. We have several people who will make brief presentations representing a variety of organizations and constituencies that are engaged in this work. And then we'll hear from our candidate, Cynthia Nixon, and then she'll take some questions. So, our first speaker is Heather McGhee, who is an equity thought leader and advocate. Heather.
My name is Heather McGhee. I'm a national thought leader on issues of equity and justice. I'm here in my personal capacity because I think this is the #1 issue facing our society, and I have been bowled over by the bold and courageous leadership and vision that Cynthia Nixon has shown on this issue, among many others. For the past 3 years, the governor has refused to support bold, clean energy legislation. The Senate Republicans have refused to allow a vote on the floor, and the governor has done zero to change that dynamic. This plan is a game changer. It can unite Black and brown communities ravaged by Sandy in Queens and here with upstate rural communities still recovering from Tropical Storm Irene. It can unite people in the Hudson Valley fighting against pipelines like members of Catskill Mountain Keeper, with leaders of the environmental justice movement in Sunset Park like Elizabeth Young-Pierre and the members of Uprose. Together, this brave movement can fight for a vision that would say without any doubt to members of the business community, there will be no more fossil fuels in New York State's future. Do not bother to invest in dirty energy because we ain't buying it. It says to members of organized labor, together we can save our planet and build the good union jobs our communities need and deserve. And to struggling frontline communities, it says, we will make you whole. We will no longer leave you behind. This vision is about all of us. I am particularly impressed by the provision that guarantees that 40% of the investments will go into low-income communities, communities of color, communities on the front lines of climate change. It is an opportunity to take out of the crisis of global warming an opportunity to also address inequality. And that is why I support this vision and Cynthia Nixon. Thank you.
Sorry, folks, the mic is a little awkward here. Okay, our next speaker is from here in the Rockaways. John Cori is with the Rockaway Beach Civic Association.
Try to fix this mic real fast.
Yeah, that's good.
There you go.
Guys, thanks for coming out. Cynthia, thanks for being here on the Rockaways. We really appreciate you taking the time and picking this place that has been dealing with climate change for so many years. The first big storm that was really very poignant in our lives was Hurricane Irene. And back then they talked about it was a climate issue. I was a skeptic, and then suddenly a few months later, within a year, we had Sandy, and that was a big game changer for me and my thought process. And basically, something has to be done. I'm a guy who's a brick and mortar guy. I believe that we should definitely fortify our surroundings of our waterfront communities. But it's definitely a big issue when communities of color, black and brown, need to really have a lot of attention brought to them, specifically to the disproportionate concerns in night shift housing, and a lot of stuff's happening with that, and it's very good. The other big problem we have right now is we have a big capital companies coming out, and they're trying to put gas pipelines down our throat. The Williams Transco pipeline. It's next
Williams, not Williams.
Bought out lots of our community. The community cannot really fight against it. Too many civic groups have accepted money. Too many too many organizations cannot come out and fight it. We had a small group last night coming out to fight it. And they just keep throwing it down our throats. We had a liquid natural gas pipeline that we fought, and we were successful in fighting that back, and that was a good thing. But unfortunately, we really need to think forward, and I appreciate Cynthia's thought process on the whole issue. And I want to give props. Again, I'm just the president of the Civic Association. I'm only as good as the people who help us out and give us good information. So I want to point out Kim Franchak from St. Energy. We got my other members of the Rockaway Civic Association, Bridget Kaplinski and Grace Miller, they're back there. And we have a lot of great other people. Daniel Silvers here is fighting hard with the pipeline. He's also former president of the Hunter Precinct Community Council. And a lot of great people. And we have another new organization called OR, and they've been really getting to the technical end of in Rockaway. We got Kim Howard and William Christopher, and they've been doing great stuff. So I just want to say again, thanks for Cynthia coming out, and I appreciate everybody coming out in the media, and the Wave and the Times have been doing a great job locally, really getting the message out there. So thanks, and keep up the fight.
Thanks, John.
Our next speaker is Sandy Survivor from Brooklyn. Her name is Rachel Rivera, and she's active with the New York Communities for Change.
Good afternoon. To tell you a little bit about my story is hard, and it hurts me and my family. I am a single parent of now 6 kids. One of my kids is in and out the hospital due to Hurricane Sandy. She is going through a lot of changes to this day. It's still devastating to us. We lost everything. I almost lost my kid that night. And it just hurts that I almost lost a family member. I lost everything that you could name of, photos, pets, everything for my apartment, and I wasn't even in the red zone. And that's due to Hurricane Sandy. I believe Hurricane Sandy is due to climate change that's going on here in New York. And it hurts. I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
You're doing great. You're doing good.
It hurts that I can't protect my child from climate change because people like, what's his name again? I keep forgetting his name, the one that's in office now. Yeah, that dude. Yeah, I forgot his name. So he's not doing anything for us because out of how many promises that he stated that he was going to go to renewable energy to get off these fossil fuels, to this day we're still waiting. How many more lives have to change or be devastated or missing or deceased or something because he doesn't want to see that fossil fuel is affecting us and climate change is for real. Because scientists don't see it in numbers. Well, how much more numbers do we need of lives that's missing? Lives that has been washed away. And I believe that, I'm sorry, I'm used to you as Miranda. Cynthia is here to make a change. So far I've seen, or should I say I've heard what she's been saying, and I believe what she's saying. My kids believe in what she's saying, especially my 12-year-old daughter that's right now in and out of the hospital because of PTSD. I think I'm saying it right. And she's 12 and she takes medications that could knock a horse down. And that's not right. And it's because of climate change. But that's a whole different issue. And I'm going to leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, Rachel's story is only one of literally thousands, tens of thousands of people all around the state who have been directly impacted and continue to be directly impacted by climate change. Our next speaker, also from Brooklyn, is Lisa Raymond-Tolan. She's the co-president of the Indivisible Nation, Brooklyn.
Hey everyone, happy Earth Day.
I'm co-president of Indivisible Nation BK. My name is Lisa Raymond-Tolan, and I'm here because it is long past time for New York to be a leader on climate. For over a year, Indivisible Nation BK has lobbied Governor Cuomo and our state senators about two bills: the Climate and Community Protection Act, which would move New York to 100% renewables, and the Climate and Community Investment Act, which would fund investment in renewables and frontline communities through a corporate polluter fee. We have met several times with Governor Cuomo's staff. We've met with our state senators. We've organized call campaigns. Call your representatives. They work for you. We've had letter writing campaigns. We've attended rallies. Because as we know, when it comes to climate, as Bill McKibben said, winning slowly is the same thing as losing.
That's right.
So Governor Cuomo says he's taking on climate. He's formed the U.S. Climate Alliance. He's set lofty renewable goals for the next decade. But after another disappointing budget cycle, we still don't have the Climate and Community Protection Act. We still don't have a ban on plastic bags. We do not have congestion pricing. And we still have not halted the Williams pipeline. It is time for Governor Cuomo to walk the walk. We have 2 more months in this legislative session. And with the IBC reunited with the Senate Democrats, and an imminent Senate majority, there is no more excuse for climate legislation to die in committee. We see how low-income communities, and primarily communities of color, pay catastrophic consequences because of climate change and pay the price for fossil fuel investment. We see that right here in the Rockaways after Sandy, and we see it in Puerto Rico. It happened months ago and is still affecting these communities. This is wrong. It's ridiculous. It is time for New York to hold polluters accountable. It is time for New York to build the renewable economy of the future. It is time for New York to be a leader. Thank you.
Yeah!
Thank you. There are a few more comments. Our next speaker is Courtney Williams. She's with the Resist Spectra Pipeline.
Yeah!
Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney Williams. I'm from Peekskill, New York. I am a scientist, I'm a wife, and I'm a mother. And for the past 5 years, I have been fighting the Algonquin pipeline expansion. That is a massive fracked gas pipeline that is carrying fracked gas from Pennsylvania through the Hudson Valley and onwards to Canada, where it can be exported. And it runs 400 feet from my house, but perhaps more concerning for all of you and for the entire state, it runs 105 feet from critical safety infrastructure at Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant. If you read the paper, you might think that Governor Cuomo is the climate leader that he portrays himself to be. But despite having banned fracking in New York State, he has ushered in an unprecedented build-out of fracked gas infrastructure. And communities like mine and across the state are paying the price for that, both with their health and with their safety. Despite Governor Cuomo's obsession with closing Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, when Spectra Energy showed up in my community saying that they wanted to expand the Algonquin pipeline and run a massive high-pressure 42-inch fracked gas pipeline 105 feet from critical safety infrastructure at the nuclear power plant, Governor Cuomo did nothing. He said nothing. The Department of Environmental Conservation approved all the air and water permits that this pipeline needed. The Department of Environmental Protection signed off on it. It runs underneath the Catskill Aqueduct that supplies drinking water for millions in New York City. He did nothing. Despite claiming that he wants to renew our energy vision, he is building fossil fuel infrastructure that will lock us into fossil fuel usage for decades to come. At the 11th hour, when this pipeline was under construction, Governor Cuomo ordered a risk assessment be conducted, and he asked the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to halt construction. That was over 2 years ago. we still have not seen this risk assessment of having a massive fracked gas pipeline underneath an aging nuclear power plant. In that time, Governor Cuomo has since cheered, saying he's closing Indian Point and New York will be safer. Now he's planning to reuse that property, a property that has 40 plus years of irradiated spent fuel stored there permanently. And while my community is trying to plan for our future and make sure we are as safe as possible and that the spent fuel stored at Indian Point doesn't catch on fire in a pipeline rupture, Governor Cuomo continues to withhold this risk assessment that would tell us how we could protect our community and really all communities in New York. If there were a spent fuel fire at Indian Point, we are looking at an impact, a radiological release that would rival Fukushima. I am tired of fighting my governor. I am tired of fighting my governor for my community and for you for 5 years. Cynthia is here today. I got to ride the subway with her and have an extended conversation about this issue. That is something I have been pushing our current governor for 5 years. I am tired of this. We need a governor who is going to stand up to the fossil fuel industry, who is going to halt the build-out of fracked gas infrastructure that's hurting communities across the state, who is going to hold polluters accountable, and is going to move us rapidly to 100% renewable energy. No community should be facing the risks that my community is facing for energy infrastructure. It's unacceptable. I am grateful to Cynthia for running for office. I am grateful for her for taking a brave stance, a necessary stance, and I am glad she is joining this fight with my community, and I am looking forward to fighting alongside of her for keeping New York State safe and moving us quickly to renewable energy that will protect all of us. So thank you, Cynthia, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. 2 more speakers from some of the young people who are active in this movement and whose very future is at stake. Our first person is Miles Goodrich from the Sunrise Movement.
Hi everyone, my name is Miles and I'm a leader with Sunrise, which is a movement of young people to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. We support candidates who take on the fossil fuel billionaires, candidates like Cynthia Nixon. Climate change became real to me, like it already is for so many New Yorkers, when I huddled in terror in my basement during Hurricane Irene. My sisters and I clutched each other as rain hammered the windows and water flooded the cellar. I remember hearing a huge crack and the foundations of my home shuddering when a giant tree crashed through my family's roof. My family spent months trying to rebuild our home together. I never want to feel so helpless and so unable to protect my family again, like I did that night. So I organized my community against the reckless greed of the fossil fuel billionaires who endangered my home and endangered the homes of young people across the country. That night stood out to me. A few years later, when I was marching on my president's office, I marched with 50 students to occupy the office of my college president to demand for fossil fuel divestment. And I was so disappointed in the leadership of my college. They said yes, in theory they believe in climate change, but no, they're not going to support students and work with students to stop investing in corporations that pollute our air and our home. And right now, the same dynamic operates today between our country's leaders and the oil barons who pollute our politics. Yes, far too many Democrats in our party say, climate change is real, but no, we're not going to refuse contributions from the filthy rich men responsible for heat strokes across Crown Heights, for disproportionate asthma rates in Harlem, and flooded homes across New York. Andrew Cuomo is one such Democrat who doesn't see a problem in governing a state battered by Hurricane Sandy while taking $87,000 from the Koch brothers. Sunrise has repeatedly asked Governor Cuomo to refuse fossil fuel contributions. Whereas he has ignored young people, Cynthia Nixon has pledged not to take a dime from the fossil fuel billionaires. And it's thanks to candidates like her that 2018 will go down as the year that Democrats can't call themselves Democrats unless they swear off dirty billionaire dollars. Sunrise is proud to endorse Cynthia Nixon because she's not afraid to say what the governor won't, that a greedy few are driving us toward catastrophe. She's not afraid to do what the governor won't and end the all-new fossil fuel infrastructure in the state. She's not afraid to stand up to corporate polluters and make them pay for the damage they inflict on our communities. And she's not afraid to join my generation in calling for an end to the corruption of our politics by a few wealthy, self-important men. I am here because democracy does not work for New Yorkers, for my generation, and really for anyone beyond the millionaire class of fossil fuel executives and the politicians they buy off. I am here because I reject that homes in the Rockaways must flood in order for the lights on Wall Street to turn on. I am here because I believe that Democrats are not Democrats at all if they take money from the fossil fueled 1%. And I'm here because when the sun rises on primary day, I believe Cynthia Nixon will be the next governor of New York.
Thank you. And finally, before we hear from Cynthia, of course, Ariana K is a high school climate activist. She's at Manhattan Hunter College High School.
Hi, my name is Ariana K, and I'm 17 years old. I moved to New York in 2010 from Bangladesh, a small country that happens to be underwater every year due to rising sea levels. I remember going to school in knee-high flood every day during the monsoon season as a result of climate change. When I moved to New York, I obviously didn't have to battle through floods to get to school, but unfortunately that does not mean that we are invulnerable to climate change here. Hurricane Sandy has displaced many families, including right here in the Far Rockaways, and events like these are only going to continue if we don't take immediate action. I've been advocating for the Climate and Community Protection Act for the past 2 years. And I've rallied outside Governor Cuomo's office, I've lobbied in Albany, I've spoken out at town halls. And the reason I did this is because I strongly believe that the CCPA, or the Climate and Community Protection Act, will mitigate future climate impacts for frontline communities while also transitioning New York to 100% renewable energy. Moreover, it will ensure that my generation can continue living in the very city that we love. Youth like me don't have the opportunity to vote yet, but we do have the ability to raise our voices for the world that we want to see. And we are going to vote soon, and when we do, we hope to elect progressive climate leadership to office and also hold all government officials accountable. And I hope we can all work together to create a world that future generations will be proud to inherit and better. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone who made presentations. I think that you all did a powerful job of laying the foundation. That is putting out a clear understanding of what the problems are. What the problems are in terms of the climate crisis and what the problem is up in Albany. Right? That's all out on the table. The question is now, what do we do about those problems? How do we move to get policies and ideas that are bold and creative and dynamic in play to actually deal with the climate crisis and the host of other issues that crisis is connected to. So it is exciting and important for New York State to hear, not only here in the Rockaways today, but around the state, from someone who actually has bold ideas, who actually is willing to push the envelope on the issues, to say that change is not just about rhetoric, it's about real policy initiatives. We are fortunate that we have a candidate who is actually pushing things so clearly that the governor seems to need to respond in a pretty regular way. At the same time, trying to dismiss this candidate. It's an interesting moment in New York politics. So it is with great pleasure that I am introducing to you now the candidate for the governor, as they say, from the great state of New York, who we believe, with the hard work of people like those who spoke today, who are in every corner of New York State, can actually win this race. Yeah. So please welcome Cynthia Nixon.
I am deeply grateful, and I am very proud to stand alongside so many great activists and organizers today. Thank you for coming, thank you for speaking, but most especially, thank you for fighting every day in this, the most important fight of all of our lives. Despite all the odds, communities across New York are practicing resilience and resistance, especially the communities of the Rockaways. I thank you for the work you do every single day to persevere and create a more just New York. Our children grow up singing about spacious skies and amber waves of grain and purple mountains' majesties. This song about our shared heritage rings so true of New York, from Niagara Falls to the Adirondack Mountains to the Rockaways. The first inhabitants of upstate New York, the Iroquois, have a saying that reminds us of our responsibilities. In every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decision on the next 7 generations. Yet today in New York, we are exposing our very own children to the devastating impact of climate change, and no more so than in our most vulnerable communities. Our state doesn't belong to a handful of fossil fuel executives. Our state belongs to all New Yorkers. The consequences of our continued inaction are grave and severe. On the eve of Hurricane Sandy, I was home with my wife, Christine, and our children, and we knew the storm was coming. So we did what so many New Yorkers did. We bought candles, we bought batteries, we filled our bathtub with water. Our youngest son was too young to understand what was happening, but he wouldn't leave my wife Christine's lap because he was so scared he could feel it. The wind started coming and the electricity went out right before we went to sleep. And the next day when we walked outside through Manhattan, water was flowing all down the streets. There were storefronts that were damaged or in some cases ruined. There was broken glass, there were fallen trees all over the sidewalks and the streets. It was horrible, but we were able to get our kids to safety. Here in the Rockaways, people did not have that luxury. Communities here saw completely flooded buildings and sustained loss of power. Residents were stuck in their apartments without heat, or without any ability to leave or get food or water. Yet even in the most dire of circumstances, so many of you came together to lend a helping hand and protect your fellow neighbors. I think about my youngest son, Max, and how scared he looked during those days in Manhattan. And I am an optimist at heart, but I'm also a realist. And I know that it's going to get so much worse if we don't act today. That's why these major catastrophic consequences can't fall victim to business as usual in Albany and a political system that caters to the needs of corporate donors over the future of New York's children. Now is the time for New York to show our children and to show all of our children and the nation what a just transition to a new clean energy economy can and should look like. Here are 3 bold ideas that are part of my climate justice agenda that need to get done and need to get done now. First, we need a just and immediate transition to 100% renewable energy. If we don't get to work now, the truth is it's going to be too late. One of my top priorities as governor will be to pass the Climate and Communities Protection Act. Governor Cuomo has a plan that deals almost exclusively with the electricity sector, when most of the emissions in New York come from buildings and transportation. The Climate and Communities Protection Act is a comprehensive plan for eliminating greenhouse gas emissions in every sector. The bill would generate over 100,000 clean, new energy jobs and protect communities and workers on the front lines of climate change. And the bill ensures that jobs in the new energy economy are good-paying jobs. In order to get to 100% clean energy economy, the second thing we need to do is we need to stop all new fossil fuel infrastructure. Governor Cuomo says that fracked gas is a so-called bridge to a renewable future. All of our best scientists say that fracked gas is a bridge to nowhere. Investing in new fracked gas infrastructure locks us into decades more emissions we cannot afford and poses serious health risks for surrounding communities. That is why I am so appalled that Governor Cuomo won't stop the proposed Williams pipeline that costs nearly $1 billion. This unnecessary and expensive pipeline will transport fracked gas within a mile of Staten Island and then will hit us right here in the Rockaways. This is not a path to 100% renewables. This is a path to continuing climate disaster.
Right.
A path to 100% renewables doesn't go through the Spectra AIM pipeline expansion in Westchester. Communities there still, after 2 years, haven't seen an independent risk assessment of what it means to have a dangerous nuclear power plant on top of a dangerous fracked gas pipeline. It is the only nuclear power plant on top of a dangerous fracked gas pipeline in the entire country. If the pipeline leaks, even once, we need to think about exactly what can happen. A path to 100% renewables doesn't go through this year's state budget, where our current administration quietly included $70 million to fund a gas micro-turbine system in a low-income community of color in downtown Albany named Sheridan Hollow. That project should be immediately abandoned and replaced with geothermal and solar energy as the community there demands. A path to 100% renewables doesn't go through Governor Cuomo's right-hand man, Joe Prococo, and his bribery schemes. Projects which have been directly tied to criminal conduct by public officials should not be allowed to benefit from their actions. All permits issued must be revoked at the CPV plant. We cannot allow communities in New York to be either a conduit or a dumping site for dangerous fracked gas. Third, we have to hold corporate polluters accountable, and we have to make them pay. Every time the fossil fuel industry pumps a ton of carbon dioxide or methane into our air, a New Yorker pays the price, whether it's an asthma attack or another superstorm Sandy. As governor, I will work with the state legislature to make corporate polluters pay for their damage to communities and to our planet. We will make them, through a polluter's tax, hold these big oil and gas companies accountable for climate change. A polluter's tax would generate billions of dollars to invest in building renewable energy, in protecting communities at the front lines of climate change, in supporting workers transitioning into the new energy economy, and in giving rebates to low and middle-income New Yorkers to save them money on their energy bills. It is bold, common-sense policy that other states are already exploring. New York should be the leader in getting it done. That is why I pledge to take zero contributions from the oil, gas, and coal industry and instead prioritize the health of our families, our climate, and our democracy over fossil fuel industry profits. Our state belongs to all New Yorkers. It is time to treat the earth as our shared home, where no one will worry that their air, water, or land is being polluted by poison dug up from the ground. We must restore balance in a world designed to sustain us and to make sure that the earth is inhabitable for the next generation, the 7th generation, and the 70th generation. This stuff is really scary. And I'm not saying that the solutions are easy, but here's the thing that makes me know that we can do it. We don't have a choice. This is an issue we can't afford to just have rhetoric and not finally have action. We need to be able to look our children in the eyes and say that we are fighting for them and for their children as well. It won't be easy, but I know that together, with the movement, we can win this fight in New York State.